Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, Sorry about that. I was just in the middle of doing something, and yeah, a bit of a time lag there. But, anyways, welcome back to ENG4C and the WASA Distance Education Network. So, yesterday was more of an introductory cover for this course. I didn't give you any key questions. Um, But that's all going to change now. Pretty well, we'll be giving you key questions every evening to work on. I did give you lots of reading, and I hope you especially looked at this section on lateral reading on page 15. Now, it sounds like a confusing idea here, but basically what it is that I'm going to demonstrate here for you what lateral reading is. And I'm going to bring up, let's see, I have a Wikipedia article here on Martin Luther King. Uh, uh, this unit, I guess, is somewhat dedicated to Martin Luther King. We'll talk about him later on. We'll show you a video of him doing a very famous speech. But for the time being, we're not after anything here other than to show you what is meant by lateral reading. First of all, I wanted to highlight, look at the tabs that I have up here on at the top of my internet browser, right? I have about a dozen tabs here. And that is indicative of lateral reading. So sometimes when we're on a website, we just keep on clicking on links in that website and we stay in that website. And that's something called drilling down um, for information, just finding information from one site. But when we talk about lateral reading, what we do is we look for relationships between websites. All right, so I'm going to go right down to the very bottom of this article, and it's a huge article um, on Martin Luther King. And look at down here, we have all of these sources that have been referred to in the article, right? So, what drilling down, what lateral reading is that if I see an interesting comment in Wikipedia that I want to explore further, find out more information on, then I can look for where that comment came from. Did it come from a reputable source, or did it come from some um, guy that you ran into uh, on the street, right? Who has his opinion, but he might not know the details about why he supports that opinion. But this is where we can go to get or look for information that is reputable, right? So, if with Martin Luther King, for instance, we reputable sources might be um, his people who knew him, right? And also reporters and journalists, people like that, family members. Um, they would give you what would be called a primary source of information. So, um, with lateral reading, what we would do is we'd open up these different sites, right? And we'd have them up here in our tabs and we'd be reading about them. And then in those sites, they might also make references to other sites. So you can see it can get quite complicated. And this is why it's really important to make notes. Now, we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the course when we have to write our essay. But for the time being, uh, that is an introduction to what lateral reading is. I wanted to explain that for you and give you some physical indication. Um, so, in any academic piece of writing, if you make a statement and or if you are taking information from someone else, you need to cite your resources. Otherwise, it's plagiarism, it's stealing. It's very important thing for you to um, recognize the people that you are taking your information from, citing your sources, right? So I'll quickly read over this paragraph. The last thing you want after all your hard work is to be accused of plagiarism, but if you don't cite your sources properly, that could happen. How do you cite your sources properly? Different subject areas have different formatting styles they like to use. While it's not important to memorize all the different formats, it's important to know how to find and use a variety of different style for guides. For the reason in this lesson, you're going to look at the APA format. All right, so right now I'm going to bring you over to uh, the Owl Purdue site. Here it is right here. I've got it up on my tabs here, right? And see, Purdue University, but it's called OWL, the website. Now, a lot of universities and colleges have something similar, but I have gotten used to myself over the years of using the OWL site because it's pretty thorough. Uh, and they stay with the accepted guidelines for all the different formats. Okay, and you can see right now we're in the APA Formatting and Style Guide 7th edition. They keep making moderate changes, and so that's why it's the 7th edition. And this has in-text citations, so you're going to use in-text citations for your um, paragraph, right? So you will be citing three different, um, in our case, they'll probably be websites because we don't have access to a lot of other resources. Um, and so in text citations, looks sort of like this, right? So we have basically, see this Wegener and Petty? That's referring to a couple of authors, and that's the year the book was published, right? But it could be different for unknown authors, organizations. Let's see, I'm scrolling down here. Personal communications. You could even cite someone's personal communications. Let's say you heard someone speaking, you know, and you said, "Oh, well, that was a pretty good idea and line. I want to cite that source," right? Traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples. This is how, okay, Caroline Jennings, Cherokee Nation, lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma, personal communication. So that's how we would cite that. And then we have electronic sources, right? Like, um, there. Okay, so uh, this is simply a web page, for instance. So you would give the title of the web page, and ND means no date, because often we want, or they do want, the date for the date that the page was published, but often we don't know that or are unable to obtain that information. All right, so this is the greatest place to go to do that. Okay, and so let me continue on now. Uh, but now we're going to kind of switch rails here, and we're going to look at writing an information paragraph. Okay, we'll go over this because um, For the remainder of this course, you'll be writing information paragraphs. Um, but most specifically for key question 2, which we'll be discussing coming up. In the next activity, you are expected to write an information paragraph. Here are some key details about the information paragraph you should keep in mind. An information paragraph gives the readers facts about one aspect of a person, a place, an event, an activity, or a natural or scientific phenomenon, or explains how something works, or gives instructions for how to do something. So that's pretty well everything in a nutshell that you might want to think about putting into a paragraph. All right, on to page 17. Parts of an information paragraph. A topic sentence that gives the reader a sense of the main idea of your paragraph. So, all the sentences that are in your paragraph, and they're called supporting details, um, will revolve around or relate to that topic sentence. So, what else about an information paragraph? At least 4 supporting details. State your point, illustrate it with a supporting detail, explain how that detail supports your topic sentence. Okay, so you just don't stick in ideas into your report or your paragraph, right? So you state that point. This is what this is why this does this, and illustrate it with a supporting detail. Um, so you give an example, maybe. Explain how the detail supports your topic sentence. Always referring back to that topic sentence. Transition words like first and then and because, and a concluding sentence that summarizes your paragraph. There are, the Purdue Online Writing Lab is mentioned here as a link. I don't think you'll be able to access it digitally. Uh, and then there's a citation builder, which you might be able to use. I can send you the link for that. I don't think you'll be able to access unless you have the electronic version of this course. All right, so we're going to dig down into expository information paragraphs a little deeper now on page 18. Um, the expository paragraph gives information. It can explain the subject, give directions, or show how to do something. In an expository piece of writing, you are sharing your knowledge about a topic with the reader. Parts of the paragraph. The topic sentence. The sentence tells your reader what the paragraph is about. It gives your paragraph direction and makes a specific statement about the topic. A good topic sentence on the topic of cats, for example, would be cats make excellent pets. It introduces the topic of cats and states an opinion about them that can be supported by reasons. The second main part of the paragraph then is the body. The body is the main part of the paragraph. This is where you give the reader all of the information you need to understand the subject. The body should contain several points, assertions, that are supported by examples and details. These details make the paragraph interesting and clear. Organize your points in the best order. They may be in a chronological order, a time-based order, or an order of importance, from least importance to most important. Example, what are 3 reasons that cats are great? The final part of the paragraph is the concluding statement. The final statement of the paragraph comes after all the details have been included in the body of the paragraph. The sentence should remind readers of the subject and restate the opinion about it. On to page 70, it's a good idea to plan your expository paragraph before writing. A sample paragraph plan follows. The structure is one that will be built from a single paragraph to a 5 paragraph essay and then to a 5 page report. Okay, so this is one of the great things about learning how to do paragraphs well is that by doing so, you create a backbone, a structure that can be expanded upon and made larger if when you have to do essays. Okay, so anytime that we're doing academic writing, we need to follow something called the writer's process, right? And that means simply doing an outline. If we're doing research, we take notes before we do the outline, and then we do a rough, and then we revise and edit the rough, and then we do the final copy. So um, here's a sample paragraph of a um, uh, outline here. So the topic we're going to discuss is students and computers. So we come up with this topic sentence. This is what our paragraph is going to be about. Um, Computers help students in many ways. And then we start to work on the body. So we're just putting these down as points to start off with. We're not worrying about them being sentences even though some of these are written in sentences. You don't have to start off with this outline. So the first point we're going to make is computers allow students to research topics quickly. Then we have to think of an example to support that first point. And we've decided that the internet and search engines such as Google and Yahoo. Then we want to come up with a second point. Computers help students edit their work. The example of that is word processing programs, check spelling and grammar. Very helpful. Point 3. Projects and assignments can be made more attractive. Example, importing graphics, charts, images, etc. And then we have a concluding statement. A computer can be a great asset to students today. Important to note right here, right now, is transition words should be used within your writing to connect ideas, to help the reader understand relationships such as time, example, contrast, etc. All right. So the next section, then we are going to explain transitions. Transitions are words or phrases that connect ideas. Using them in your writing will help the reader understand relationships such as time, space, emphasis, example, contrast, etc. Under the bold headings are reasons or examples of transition words that help ideas flow smoothly. Now, these are only some of the transitions. There are tons of transitions out there. Some are more complex and some more advanced and some are more specific to certain subject areas. I think I do have a really great file that lists about 100 transitions. Um, if you ever want me to send it to you, I can do that. I'm not going to cover them in the class here because we are moving right along. But we will look at these and show you how they are used, right? Okay, so if we have, if our paragraph, uh, if we want to create a kind of sequential relationship of the different points in there, so this happened first, this happened second, this happened third, um, we could use these transitions after, finally, as soon as, tomorrow, or first. If we are talking about locations, we could use transitions like among, behind, below, near, in front of, or throughout. If we are contrasting two ideas, my idea is better than your idea, um, we can use these transitions, although, still, yet, however. But on the other hand, if we're adding more ideas in our paragraph, we could use transitions like for instance, besides, another, again. And then for concluding transitions, finally, lastly, to sum up, therefore. Right, so here's some examples that contain transitions. On the weekend, right, we went to the library. Afterwards, we went shopping. Okay, so we're telling you what we did on the weekend and then afterwards. Um, Martha is very selfish with her money. In contrast, right, so we're comparing Martha and Jennifer. In contrast, Jennifer is extremely generous. And the final one, I get nervous when I have to present in front of my peers. As a result, right? Uh, in conclusion, I try to avoid these situations. All right, so there's a paragraph here where you can practice doing transition words or phrases. Um, no person can live in the world alone. I'd like you to give that a try. And then, um, since we don't really have enough time in this class, I'll have to skip over this one. But give this one a try. Now, our example paragraph about computers, here we are with the paragraph that we worked out. And it's a real world example. Today, computers can help students in several ways. First, there's our first transition word. First, computers allow students to research topics quickly using internet and search engines such as Google and Yahoo. Second, there's our we're setting up a sequence here. First, second. Second, computers can also help students edit their work. There are several word processing programs that can help with checking both spelling and grammar. And then finally, right, so our final example, projects and assignments can be made to look more attractive with the use of technology. Graphics, such as images, charts, etc., can be imported right into the document. It is clear from these reasons that a computer can be a great asset to students today. And so, right here, now I won't get too much into what are called conceptual transitions, but it is clear from these reasons, the reasons that we just mentioned, right? So this sentence gets connected to everything that we mentioned in the first, second, and finally um, uh, points in this paragraph. These reasons, right? All right, so this section on page 20 is a review of APA citation basics. Okay, so basically this is the one that you'll use very often, right? Jones 1998. Um, but let's see. I'm just going to skim down. I'd like you to read all of this. Um, and you can see it's been copied somewhat from the OWL Purdue site. Okay. The next section here is, excuse me, okay. Um, so on page 25, I have an example references page in the APA style. Kind of looks odd, eh? Okay, so this is the page that wherever we get our sources or information from, we have to identify these pages. Now, I do have an actual more explicit one here for you. There we go. Okay. Now, this is something I made up to help a student um, on setting up references to the essay that we are going to do later on. Um, so, notice that this reference right here has an HTTPS address, so we know that that's an internet address, right? And this is actually the people who have created the website, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. This is the year that it was last edited or updated, and this is the title of the page where we got the information from. Now, let's see, this one here is from a text. So generally we have an author. There's an author right there. That's the year it was published. So Doe, R.K. Doe, uh, it published in 2021. Um, let's see, here's another web page right here. This one here looks pretty complex, eh? And it is. And hopefully you won't have to, when you do your research, you won't um, uh, have to use one of these documents. These are professional journals. This one is the Educational Psychology Review. Generally, you can't find these from regular internet searches, and they are, but if you go on to college or university, you'll have access to some of these professional journals, they're called, right? Um, this is what they are formatted like. And then this is a PDF that was downloaded from the World Health Organization, right? Okay. So notice that they all have what's called a hanging indent, and that's an APA style thing, right? So um, this is kind of a you go across one line, then you tab, and then continue on with your reference. But there's a way to do that um, in when you format. Let's see. I know how to do it on Word. Oh, indentation options right there. So if you click on that, notice right here it says hanging indent. So you just select your text, and then you create a hanging indent for it like that. Okay, so we won't belabor this. We'll just I just want to uh, identify how you could do that in Google Docs. All right, going back to our key question then. Unit 1, Activity 1, Key Questions on page 26. So, for this key question, we first of all go through the steps that we need to do before we proceed with the assignment. So, the first thing we have to do is create a checklist of criteria for evaluating a website. Okay, so to do that, we go back to the previous pages and from the reading that we did last night, we look at what here. Okay, where is it again? Oh, it's just previous to that. Right, here they are, right here on, sorry, using websites for research on page 12. Okay, I asked you to read that for homework last night. So this is where you find the criteria for websites. Now, I wonder if there's a better way than having for me to scroll back and forth like this all the time. It seems it takes too much time, but anyways, bear with me. And we'll look at the second thing we need to do. Understand how to create in-text citations in APA format. So basically, all you do there is you after you have put a quotation into your paragraph, you put parentheses in there, and within the parentheses, you put the name, the title of the page that you are using, and if you have a year. If you don't have a year, if you have an author, you put in the author rather than the title of the page. Understand how to create a reference page in APA format, and I just demonstrated that for you, how to do that. Oh, I forgot to mention that all of your entries in the reference page are done in alphabetical format. I'll just go back here again and show that to you, right? So we have C, right? Even though it's the title of the page, right, or the title of the website, right, is C, and then the next one is C, right? Um, and then we have Doe, John Doe. That's the person, but we keep it in alphabetical order, right? And then we have an M, and then W and W, right? So this all needs to be in alphabetical order. I forgot to mention that to you. Okay. So what are we going to do here for key question one? We're going to just start right at the very basics. Now, earlier on in the course, or yesterday, we were discussing a famous person that you might admire. Your job is to use your finely tuned research skills to find a quotation from that person that speaks to you. Explain why you like the quotation. Make sure you include a citation with APA format. All right, so for this particular quotation, right, you don't have to do a references page, right? Um, but you do have to do a quote with an in-text citation. So let's say I wanted to do Martin Luther King, right? I would simply go for Martin Luther King quotes. All right. And here's quotations from the National Park Service. Wow. Okay, so there's a lot of really good quotations here. What you have to do is like scan through them and see, oh, these are actually on the wall inscriptions at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, which must be in, let's see, it's in the district, oh, it's in District of Columbia, so that's DC, Washington. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love could do that. Okay, let's say you want to use that quotation, you would simply uh, transcribe that or copy it whole and put it into a short little paragraph there, right? Doesn't even have to be a paragraph. You would just say something like, um, the famous person that I admire most is um, Martin Luther King. One of the reasons I like him so much is the amazing things that he said about human beings. For example, comma, transition word, comma, and then, for example, and then I would give that quote in quotation marks. And then I would put a parenthesis after that. And um, let's see, National Park Services. I'll put National Park Services in there. I don't see any dates here at all. So I would put ND, no date. Um, National Park Service, I could put a comma, Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. And that would identify the where we got the quotation from, right? So you get that, right? We're starting small here. The next key question that we do will be uh, with a little more detail. That's the information paragraph. Now we've gone through over how to write an information paragraph. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at this. Using the checklist for evaluating a website, so you can get that off of the information that we've given to you earlier on in the unit. Conduct some research to find out important details about the famous person you admire. You'll be writing an information paragraph that identifies the different traits that your role model has and explains how he or she has demonstrated those traits. You must cite at least three different sources within your paragraph using APA format for in-text citations. Your audience for this paragraph is your peers, and your purpose is to inform. Along with your paragraph, you will submit a reference page that lists three sources you used in APA format and a copy of the checklist that you used. Okay, so you could use the checklist to check out the websites where you got the information from. All right, so I'm going to go right now and all right. So this is a paragraph that I just put together as an example piece for Martin Luther King. Let's see, I have my topic sentence here. I'm going to increase the size of this so you can see it better. Mm, Oh, is that better? Maybe one more. All right. Okay, here's my topic sentence. Martin Luther King Jr. demonstrated many admirable traits, including courage, persever- uh, perseverance, and compassion. All right, so I introduced you to what the sentence is about, Martin Luther King and his many admirable traits, and I also uh, introduced you to the topics or the supporting sentences or information, the examples that I was going to include in the paragraph. Courage, perseverance, and comparison or comparison, compassion. All right. Then next I throw in a transition word. First, he showed incredible courage by standing up against racism and injustice, even when facing danger. Now, I've done things a little bit different here, but see this as Branch 1998 knows. Okay, so I'm referring to someone specifically in my sentence. I'm not giving you kind of a, a blank statement that I have to put the branch. Generally, I might put branch right into these parentheses here, but because I'm referring to him directly, branch, I can have him outside of those parentheses. So, as branch 1988 in parentheses notes, King was, and here's my quotation, there should actually be a comma here, willing to take his life at risk for, willing to put his life at risk for the moral principles of nonviolence. And that's in quotations, right? Next, another transition word, holding all our ideas together. King's perseverance was evident in his tireless activism and leadership. Despite arrests, threats, and opposition, he continued to push forward, stating, comma, and here's my um, quotation, if you can't fly, then run. But whatever you do, notice that there's ellipses there. That means that they took part of it out because the quotation would have been too long. You don't have to put it all in there. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. And so this is what most often we'll find our quotation, like or our in-text citation, right? Mark the difference between this and the one we looked at previously. Here we have the author, Carson, the year of the book, and then the actual page number. Finally, his compassion drove his commitment to peace, protest, and unity in his letter to Birmingham jail. So this is the title of the um, item that we're resourcing or that we've sourced. In his letter to Birmingham jail, notice it's in italics. King, 1963, wrote, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, showing his deep concern for all people, regardless of race. Finally, here's our last transition word. In conclusion, it was these traits, courage, perseverance, and compassion, which made King a transformative leader whose legacy continues to impact the world. And here's our references, right? There's that branch right there that was referred to in the first quotation up here, right? There's all the information that we need to find that source, right? The page numbers. Um, well, that's the title of the book, Parting the Waters, America in the King Years from 1954 to 63. Um, there's the publishers, Carson C. He wrote the book called The Autobiography of Martin Luther King. It's published by Warner Books. And here's how you would um, put a letter in APA format. King, because he was the creator of the letter, ML Jr., 1963, letter from Birmingham jail. Now we could do simply select these and format them. Oh, right. And we'll, oh, hanging indent. Uh, oh, oh, yeah. No, we don't want to do that. Uh, yeah, undo. Oh, yeah. Well, we're just about running out of time. I'll come back. I'll figure out what I did wrong when we come back for class. So now we have two key questions. I hope that I've explained it well enough for you to complete both the quotation, key question one, using the APA format for the in-text citation, and then the information paragraph, key question two, following the standards of writing a paragraph. We also want to see a reference page um, and then a copy of the checklist you used to determine if the websites that you were taking information from had were reliable. All right. So on page 27 is the assessment for the rubric. Right. Have a look at level four. That's what you want to achieve. Right. Uh, you need to demonstrate an excellent understanding of APA formatting, demonstrate excellent knowledge of, the reference page must demonstrate that as well. The checklist demonstrates excellent consideration of the criteria for establishing a website's reliability. You communicate ideas using information paragraph format with a high degree of clarity, and your paragraph demonstrates excellent use of research strategies by referencing at least three reliable sources. That's what you need to achieve. We're jumping right into the fire here. But this is all very important stuff because you're going to college, you're taking this course to go to college, and you have to really have a good feeling for citing sources there because, well, that's just what you do. All right. So, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed our class. We'll be back on air again tomorrow at the same time. Have a great evening, everyone, and we will see you then. Bye for now.